I told you this seat is first class. Your economy ticket is for the back. Get up right now or the officer will escort you off this plane.
The first thing Patricia Collins noticed was the hoodie. Not the boarding pass. Not the green light on the scanner. Not the name printed clearly beside seat 1A. The hoodie. Faded grey. Oversized. College lettering across the chest. The kind of sweatshirt people wore to late-night diners. Not $12,000 first-class suites. Patricia stood at the aircraft door with her silver tray balanced against one hip, watching the young black woman step into the cabin like she had every right to be there. And that, more than anything, bothered her. Maya Bennett didn't look nervous. She didn't look lost. She didn't glance around for permission. She simply thanked the gate agent, adjusted the strap of her worn canvas backpack, and turned left into first class. Behind her, London Heathrow roared with its usual morning chaos. Rolling suitcases clicked over polished floors. Boarding announcements echoed through the terminal. Somewhere down the jet bridge, a child cried. A businessman cursed under his breath into a phone. But inside the front cabin of Liberty Atlantic Flight 88, the air was quiet. Too quiet. Soft white lights glowed over cream leather pods. Crystal glasses waited on linen-lined trays. The scent of espresso, warm towels, and expensive cologne floated beneath the low hum of the ventilation system. This was a cabin built to make rich people feel safe from the rest of the world. Maya moved through it without asking for space. She was 24, slim, tired-eyed, and dressed like someone who had slept badly and cared more about comfort than appearance. Her jeans were faded at the knees. Her sneakers had a scuff along the left toe. Her hair was pulled back loosely, not styled for attention, not polished for judgment. Seat 1A was waiting near the nose of the aircraft, the most private seat on the plane. Maya lifted her backpack into the overhead bin, slid into the leather suite, and exhaled slowly. For the first time in hours, her shoulders dropped. She opened her laptop. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Debt exposure, liquidity risk, emergency bridge financing, $800 million in conditional support. No one nearby saw it. No one was meant to. Maya preferred it that way. Her father had taught her early that real power did not have to arrive loudly. Sometimes it entered a room quietly, sat down, and listened. Across the aisle, Charles Whitman folded his newspaper and glanced at her over his reading glasses. He was 52, polished, silver-haired, with cufflinks that flashed when he moved. His eyes paused on Maya's hoodie, then her backpack, then her face. He looked away without speaking. 2 rows behind, Eleanor Preston adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist and leaned toward her husband. "Are they boarding everyone through first class now?" she whispered. Her husband gave a small shrug, the kind that meant he heard her but did not want to be involved. Maya heard it. She had heard worse. She did not look up. Patricia Collins watched from the galley, her smile tightening by degrees. She had worked premium routes for more than 30 years. In her mind, first class had a language. Tailored suits, designer bags, old money voices, people who expected champagne before they sat down. Maya Bennett spoke none of that language. Patricia picked up the silver tray and began her service round. "Champagne, Mr. Whitman?" Charles smiled without looking up. "Thank you, Patricia." She moved smoothly. "Sparkling water, Mrs. Preston." "Perfect, dear." Then Patricia reached seat 1A. Her steps slowed. Maya looked up politely. For 1 second, neither woman spoke. Patricia's eyes traveled over the hoodie, the worn jeans, the plain backpack in the bin. Her smile did not disappear. It changed into something colder. "Excuse me," Patricia said. Her voice was soft enough to sound professional, sharp enough to cut. I think you may be in the wrong section. Maya blinked once. I'm sorry? Patricia leaned closer over the partition. The main cabin is toward the rear of the aircraft. This is first class. A faint silence opened around them. Charles lowered his newspaper again. Eleanor stopped moving her bracelet. Maya removed one earbud with slow care. I know where I am, she said. This is seat 1A. Patricia gave a small laugh. Not loud, worse. Controlled. Sweetheart, that seat is reserved for an Apex suite passenger. Maya's face remained calm, but something in her eyes cooled. Yes, she said. That would be me. Patricia stared at her. A second passed, then another. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Some injustices do not begin with shouting. They begin with a look, a pause, a decision made before the facts are checked. Patricia tucked the tray under her arm. Let me see your boarding pass. Maya reached for her phone. Calmly, quietly. But deep inside, something old and familiar tightened in her chest. Not fear. Recognition. Maya held up her phone. The screen was bright, clean, impossible to misunderstand. Liberty Atlantic Flight 88, London Heathrow to New York. Passenger name, Maya Bennett. Seat 1A, Apex Suite. Confirmed. Patricia looked at it for half a second. Then she looked at Maya again. That was the moment Maya understood. This was not confusion. Confusion asks questions. Prejudice already has answers. Patricia's mouth tightened. Anyone can take a screenshot. Charles Whitman shifted behind his newspaper. The paper made a dry, crackling sound in the silence. Eleanor Preston leaned slightly into the aisle, her lips parted, not with concern, but with interest. To her, this was becoming a delay, not a humiliation. Maya kept the phone raised. The gate agent scanned it, she said. The system cleared me. Patricia gave a slow nod, the kind people use when they are not listening. I need to see a printed boarding pass. I don't have one. I used the app. That is convenient. Maya lowered her phone just a little. A pulse moved in her jaw. She could feel every eye in that front cabin now. Not all hostile, some embarrassed, some curious, some relieved it was not happening to them. Patricia stood taller. Her uniform was perfect. Gold wings on her chest, hair pinned so tightly it looked painful. She had the look of someone who believed a badge gave her wisdom. It did not. I am going to ask you politely, Patricia said, though there was nothing polite left in her voice. Please gather your things and step out of the seat while we verify your status. My status is on your manifest. Miss, do not argue with me. Maya inhaled through her nose. Slow. Steady. Her father's voice came back to her. Do not give people the reaction they are trying to buy from you. She placed her phone on the armrest. I am not arguing, she said. I am asking you to do your job. Check the manifest. Call the gate. Scan the pass again. Any of those would solve this. The words landed softly. That made them worse for Patricia, because calm can feel like defiance to people who expect obedience. Patricia's cheeks flushed. I have been flying international premium routes longer than you have been alive. I am sure you have. A small gasp came from Eleanor Preston. Patricia heard it. She liked having an audience. It strengthened the worst part of her. Then you should understand, Maya continued, that removing a ticketed passenger without verification is not procedure. Charles finally lowered the newspaper all the way. He looked at Patricia, then at Maya. His face showed discomfort, but not courage. Maybe just check the list, he murmured. Patricia turned her head sharply. Sir, I have this under control. Charles looked down, and just like that, the small chance for decency disappeared. Eleanor gave a soft huff. Honestly, Patricia, we do need to depart on time. Some of us have connections. Maya turned her eyes toward her. Just for a second. No anger. Only a tiredness so old it seemed inherited. Eleanor looked away first. Patricia leaned closer to Maya, lowering her voice. I do not know how you got past the gate, but I am not letting this cabin become a free-for-all. These passengers paid serious money to be here. Maya's eyes narrowed. I paid to be here. With what card? The question hung there. Ugly, personal, unnecessary. Maya stared at her. What? The card used to purchase the ticket. Show it to me. That is not a standard request. It is today. The cabin went still again. The engines hummed beneath the floor. Somewhere in the galley, ice shifted in a metal drawer. The sound was small and bright, like glass breaking far away. Maya sat back slowly. The ticket was booked through a corporate travel office. Patricia smiled. There it was, the smile of someone who believed she had found the lie. Of course it was. It was processed through a private account. Private account. Patricia repeated the words with open mockery. And I suppose your assistant arranged it. Maya didn't answer. Because yes, her assistant had arranged it. Along with the car waiting in New York. Along with the secure call scheduled with Bennett Global Partners. Along with the final review of a bridge financing package that Liberty Atlantic needed so badly its board had been calling her father twice a day. But Maya said none of that. Power revealed too early often sounds like arrogance, and she had learned not to defend her dignity by listing her family's money, so she only said, "Please call the gate agent." Patricia's expression hardened. No, you are going to step out of that seat. Maya's fingers rested lightly on the edge of the armrest. Not until someone verifies the record. Patricia straightened. Her voice rose. Just enough. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We appear to have a passenger in the first-class cabin who cannot provide proper verification. The words rolled through the cabin like smoke. Cannot provide. Not will not. Not has shown me a valid mobile pass. Cannot. That was how people rewrote the truth in public. Maya looked around. Phones were coming up now. Not many. Enough. A man in row 3 angled his screen over the partition. A woman pretended to text while recording. Eleanor folded her hands over her designer bag, as if protecting it from contamination. Patricia touched the interphone on the wall. Gate control. This is Senior Purser Collins on Flight 88. I need ground support at the forward cabin. Maya's heartbeat slowed. That surprised even her. She was not afraid anymore. She was disappointed. Deeply. Completely. Because this was bigger than one seat. It always had been. Patricia turned back with a cold, satisfied look. Security is coming. Maya picked up her phone and locked the screen. Then she looked Patricia directly in the eyes. Then make sure you spell my name correctly in your report. Patricia did spell the name correctly. She just did not understand the weight of it. Maya Bennett. 2 simple words entered into the cabin incident log beneath a category Patricia selected with quick, angry fingers. Passenger verification issue. Then she added another phrase, refusing crew instruction. Maya watched her type it. She felt the familiar sting of being turned into a problem on paper. That was how unfairness survived in professional places, not always through shouting, sometimes through neat language, clean forms, calm voices, reports that removed the human being from the story. Across the aisle, Charles Whitman cleared his throat. "Miss Bennett," he said quietly, "perhaps if you just step into the galley for a moment, they can sort this out." Maya turned to him. His face was kind enough to feel safe to himself, but not brave enough to be useful. "I have done nothing wrong," she said. Charles swallowed. His fingers tightened around the newspaper. No, of course. I only mean, sometimes it is easier to cooperate. Maya held his gaze for a beat. That depends on what cooperation costs. He had no answer. Eleanor Preston gave another impatient sigh, louder this time. This is exactly why boarding takes forever now. Everyone wants to make a statement. Maya looked ahead, not at her. Patricia heard the comment and let it feed her confidence. She stepped closer to the aisle, shoulders squared, silver wings shining under the cabin lights. Miss Bennett, I am giving you one final opportunity to deplane voluntarily while we verify your information. Maya's eyes lifted. Deplane? Yes. You have not checked with the gate. We are past that point. No, Maya said. You moved past it because checking would prove I belong here. The words struck the cabin hard. A man in row 3 stopped pretending not to film. His phone rose openly now. A young woman seated beside him whispered, "This is messed up." But her voice stayed low, trapped behind caution. Patricia's mouth tightened. Lower your voice. Maya had not raised it. That was the strange thing. Everyone knew it. Even Patricia knew it. The cabin door was still open. The jet bridge air pushed in, carrying the smell of rain, fuel, and cold metal. Outside, Heathrow moved with mechanical patience. Bags rolled, radios crackled, engines whined in the distance. Inside, time narrowed around seat 1A. Maya closed her laptop and slid it into a backpack, slowly. Not surrender. Preparation. Patricia watched the movement and seemed to mistake it for victory. Thank you, she said. Maya looked up. I am not leaving because you are right. I am preparing because people with power often mistake compliance for guilt. For the first time, Patricia's expression flickered. Not remorse, irritation. A shadow appeared at the front door. 2 airport security officers stepped onto the aircraft, followed by a Heathrow police constable in a dark vest. The first officer was broad-shouldered, mid-40s, with tired eyes and a radio clipped to his chest. His name badge read, Officer Reeves. Behind him stood a younger officer, nervous, scanning the cabin as if expecting a fight. Patricia moved toward them quickly. Her voice changed at once. Softer, wounded, professional. Thank you for coming. The passenger in 1A is refusing to provide proper verification and will not follow crew instructions. Officer Reeves looked toward Maya. He saw a young black woman sitting still, hands folded, backpack at her feet, face calm but pale around the mouth. Then he looked at Patricia. What documentation has she provided? Patricia blinked. A mobile pass, but it could be a screenshot. Was it scanned at boarding? Patricia hesitated. The pause was small. Maya noticed. So did Reeves. I was told she boarded, Patricia said. That is not what I asked. The cabin shifted, a tiny change in pressure. For the first time, Patricia was not fully in control. Maya reached for her phone and held it out to Officer Reeves. My boarding pass. My passport is in my bag. I can show both. I have asked her repeatedly to check the manifest or contact the gate agent. Officer Reeves took the phone. He studied the screen, then glanced at Patricia. This does show seat 1A. Patricia folded her arms. Officer, with respect, passengers have become very sophisticated. We cannot risk premium cabin fraud. Premium cabin fraud? Maya almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the phrase was so polished, so official, so absurd. Officer Reeves handed the phone back. Miss Bennett, would you mind showing your passport? Not at all. Maya unzipped her backpack. The younger officer stepped forward instinctively, hand lifting. Reeves raised his palm. Easy. Maya paused, then slowly removed her passport. She handed it over without breaking eye contact with Patricia. Reeves checked the name. Maya Bennett. He looked at the phone again. Same name, same flight, same seat. His face changed slightly. Not enough for the whole cabin to read. Enough for Maya. Everything appears to match, he said. Patricia's face flushed red. Then call the gate, Maya said softly. Reeves turned toward Patricia. I think we should verify with the gate before taking further action. For one fragile second, decency had a doorway. Then Patricia closed it. She has already disrupted this cabin. My crew will not be comfortable serving her on this flight. There it was. Not safety, not documentation. Comfort. Her comfort. The comfort of people who wanted prejudice to go unchallenged. Maya slowly stood. The cabin watched her rise. She was not tall, but in that moment she seemed to fill the aisle. She picked up her backpack. Her voice was calm. Painfully calm. I will step off this aircraft under protest. I want every name, every badge number, every word documented. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. Officer Reeves looked ashamed. I understand, he said quietly. Maya stepped into the aisle. As she passed Charles, he looked down at his hands. As she passed Eleanor, the older woman stared out the window, suddenly fascinated by the wing. No one spoke. Not one person. At the aircraft door, Maya stopped and turned back. Her eyes found Patricia. You thought this was about a seat, she said. The cabin went silent. Maya's voice dropped. It was never about the seat. Then she walked into the jet bridge, where the cold airport lights swallowed her whole. The jet bridge felt colder than the cabin, not because of the temperature, because out there, away from the leather seats and polished service smiles, the insult had room to breathe. Maya walked beside Officer Reeves with her backpack hanging from one shoulder. The younger officer followed 2 steps behind. His boots struck the metal floor too loudly, each step echoing like a warning. Behind them, the aircraft door stayed open. Patricia stood inside it, framed by soft cabin light, arms folded, chin raised. She looked like a woman waiting to be congratulated for restoring order. Maya did not look back. At the gate, travelers stared. Some had heard pieces of the commotion. Others saw only the ending. A young black woman being escorted off a first-class flight. 2 security officers beside her. A police constable behind her. People filled in the blanks the way people often do. Quickly. Carelessly. A man in a navy coat pulled his suitcase closer to his leg. A woman whispered to her husband, "What happened?" He shrugged, but his eyes followed Maya like he already knew. Officer Reeves stopped near the podium, away from the crowd. "Miss Bennett," he said, voice low. "I am going to call the gate supervisor. We can verify the manifest here." Maya turned to him. "You could have done that on the plane." The words were not cruel. That made them heavier. Reeves looked down at the passport in his hand. His jaw worked once. He was a decent man, or close to it. But decency delayed is still damage. "You are right," he said. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. Maya took back her passport and phone. Her hands were steady, but her breath was not. She felt the tightness rising behind her ribs, now that the performance of calm was no longer being watched by the whole cabin. She hated that part, the shaking afterward. The body always told the truth before pride allowed it. Across the gate area, a teenage girl held up a phone. Recording. Maya saw it. Reeves saw it too. "Please stop filming," he said sharply. The girl lowered the phone halfway. Not fully. Maya lifted one hand. "It is fine." Reeves blinked. "Miss Bennett, you do not have to let people record you." "No," Maya said. But sometimes evidence arrives from people who are too afraid to help. That silenced him. At the podium, the gate supervisor hurried over. Her name tag read Allison Parker, late 30s. Red hair pulled into a loose bun. Face tense from too many problems before noon. "What is going on?" Allison asked, looking from Reeves to Maya. Officer Reeves handed her the details. Passenger removed from first class for verification. Name Maya Bennett. Seat 1A. Need manifest confirmation. Allison typed fast. Her eyes flicked across the screen, then stopped. Her face changed. Color drained from her cheeks in slow motion. She looked at Maya, then at the screen, then back at Maya. "Oh my God," she whispered. Maya said nothing. Allison swallowed hard. Her voice dropped. "Miss Bennett, I am so sorry. You are confirmed in 1A, Apex Suite. Full fare, cleared security, cleared boarding. Scanned at the gate at 10:16 this morning." Officer Reeves closed his eyes briefly. The younger officer stared at the floor. Allison kept reading, and with every line her hands moved faster. "There is also a special service note attached to your booking. Corporate finance contact, private handling. No disruption unless requested by passenger." Maya's expression didn't change, but something sharp moved behind her eyes. Allison knew enough about airlines to understand certain codes. Not all of them. Enough. This was not a regular passenger. This was someone whose itinerary had been protected by people far above airport operations. Allison leaned closer. "Miss Bennett, please allow me to get you back on board immediately. I will personally speak to the purser." Maya looked toward the open aircraft door. From where she stood, she could still see the first-class cabin through the jet bridge window. Patricia had disappeared inside, probably telling the others the problem had been solved. Maya's voice was quiet. "No." Allison froze. "Miss Bennett, I will not reboard that aircraft while Patricia Collins is in charge of that cabin." Allison nodded too quickly. "We can assign another crew member to serve you." "That is not the issue." Maya turned fully toward her now. "The issue is that your airline allowed a senior employee to look at a valid passenger, ignore the system, invent suspicion, call security, and remove her from a seat she paid for." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "The issue is that no one checked the facts until after I was humiliated." Allison's mouth opened, but nothing came out. There was no easy apology for that. No voucher big enough. No script clean enough. Maya stepped away from the podium and walked toward the wide glass windows overlooking the runway. Planes moved in the distance like silver animals under the grey London sky. She pulled out her phone. There were 6 missed calls from her assistant, 2 from the New York office, 1 from her father. Maya stared at that last name for a moment. Jonathan Bennett. She did not want to call him. Not yet. Because she knew what would happen when she did. Her father loved quietly, but he protected like a storm. She pressed the name. The line rang once. Then his voice came through, calm and warm. "Maya, are you in the air?" She closed her eyes. For 1 second, she was not an heir, not a finance contact, not the quiet center of an $800 million deal. She was just a daughter who had been hurt. "No, Dad," she said. Her voice almost broke. I was removed from the plane. Silence, not confusion, not disbelief. A silence that sharpened. Jonathan Bennett spoke again, slower now. "Who removed you?" Maya opened her eyes and looked back toward Flight 88. Liberty Atlantic did. Jonathan Bennett did not raise his voice. That was what made the silence on the other end of the phone so frightening. Maya stood by the glass, watching a Liberty Atlantic jet crawl across the wet tarmac. Its lights blinked red and white against the grey morning. Beyond it, service trucks moved in straight lines. Workers in yellow vests waved wands. Everything looked orderly from a distance. That was the lie airports told best. "I want you to tell me exactly what happened," Jonathan said. Maya pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of her nose. She questioned my seat. I showed my mobile boarding pass. She said it could be a screenshot. I asked her to check the manifest. She refused. She demanded a printed ticket. Then the card used to buy the ticket. Jonathan said nothing. Maya swallowed. She called security. Told them I could not provide proper verification. The gate supervisor just confirmed I was cleared the whole time. Behind her, Alison Parker stood frozen near the podium. Officer Reeves had stepped aside, speaking quietly into his radio, but his eyes kept returning to Maya. He knew he was standing near something larger now, something that had moved beyond a passenger complaint. Jonathan's voice came back, even softer. What was the employee's name? Maya looked toward the aircraft door. Patricia Collins, senior purser. A small sound came through the line. Not a sigh, not anger, something colder. And the airline? Maya's eyes closed. Dad. The airline, Maya. You know the airline? Yes, Jonathan said. I do. He did know. He knew every number in Liberty Atlantic's balance sheet. He knew their fuel debt, their pension exposure, their maintenance backlog, their poor customer service ratings, their declining corporate travel contracts. He knew which creditors were nervous. He knew which board members were desperate. He knew the $800 million bridge package was not a favor. It was a lifeline, and Liberty Atlantic had just cut into the hand offering it. Maya turned away from Alison and lowered her voice. I do not want this to become only about me. It is not only about you. I mean it. So do I. His voice stayed controlled, but she could hear the father beneath the financier. The man who had once driven overnight from Atlanta to North Carolina because Maya, at 17, had called him crying after a store manager accused her of stealing earrings she had already paid for. He had not shouted then either. He had simply arrived, documented, resolved, and made sure she understood that dignity was not something other people granted. Maya, he said, did anyone on that aircraft help you? She opened her eyes. The question hurt more than she expected. There was one man who almost said something. Almost. Yes. Jonathan let the word sit. Almost. A small word, a common word, a dangerous word. Almost was where conscience went to hide when courage became inconvenient. No one stopped it, Maya said. Her voice thinned on the last word. For the first time all morning, the pain slipped through. Jonathan heard it. In New York, inside a conference room, high above Madison Avenue, 12 people sat around a long table waiting for him. Lawyers, bankers, risk officers. 2 representatives from Morgan Stanley. 1 from Goldman Sachs. A Liberty Atlantic advisor sat at the far end, smiling nervously at a pitcher of untouched water. Jonathan stood by the window with his phone pressed to his ear. He was 61, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit so plain it looked almost severe. His hair was grey at the temples. His face had the stillness of a man who had survived too much to waste movement. Across the room, his chief legal officer, Rachel Monroe, watched his expression and slowly closed her folder. She knew that look. Deals did not die loudly around Jonathan Bennett. They died with a sentence. "Where are you now?" he asked. "At the gate. Are you safe?" "Yes. Do you want to continue on that flight?" Maya looked through the glass at the aircraft. She imagined walking back into that cabin, Patricia's tight smile, Eleanor's averted eyes, Charles pretending his newspaper required deep study, the quiet apology of people who had not earned forgiveness. "No," Maya said. "I do not." "Good." Dad. I need you to listen carefully, Jonathan said. His voice changed, not harsher, cleaner. Business had entered the room. You are going to remain at the gate until our London counsel arrives. You will not sign anything. You will not accept compensation. You will not speak to their customer relations team without counsel present. Maya breathed in. Okay. And Maya? Yes. You did nothing wrong. The words were simple. That was why they reached her. Her hand tightened around the phone. For a moment, she could not speak. Inside the aircraft, Patricia had returned to service. She was pouring champagne again, smiling at passengers as if the morning had been saved from disorder. Flight 88's door was being prepared for closure. Alison saw it and stepped toward Maya. Miss Bennet, she said carefully, we still may be able to reaccommodate you on another Liberty Atlantic flight today. Maya lowered the phone, but didn't hang up. My father is on the line. Alison's face went pale again. Jonathan heard the voice, faintly through the receiver. Put me on speaker, he said. Maya looked at Alison. Then she tapped the screen. Jonathan Bennett's voice filled the small space beside the gate. This is Jonathan Bennett of Bennett Global Partners. I need the senior Liberty Atlantic executive on duty at Heathrow contacted immediately. Alison went completely still. Officer Reeves turned. The younger officer stopped breathing for a second. Jonathan continued. And until I speak with that executive, Flight 88 does not close its door, Alison whispered. Sir, departure control is already preparing. Pushback. Jonathan's reply was calm. Then stop preparing. A beat passed, then another. On the aircraft, the jet bridge lights flickered. Inside the cabin, Patricia looked toward the front door, confused. The first crack had appeared. Alison Parker reached for the gate phone with a hand that no longer felt steady. Her training told her to stay calm. Her instincts told her the situation had just moved far above her badge. Departure control. This is gate B24, she said, forcing her voice into the clipped rhythm of airline procedure. Hold door closure on Liberty Atlantic Flight 88. Repeat, hold door closure. There was a pause, then a crackle. B24. State reason. Alison looked at Maya. Maya stood by the window, phone in her hand, face composed in a way that made people underestimate how much pain she was holding back. Executive escalation, Alison said. Passenger removal under review. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the gate screen blinked. Boarding complete change to hold. Inside the aircraft, the cabin lights seemed suddenly too bright. Patricia Collins stood near the forward galley with a bottle of champagne in one hand and a practiced smile frozen on her face. She had been moments away from closing the matter in her mind. A difficult passenger removed. Cabin restored. Schedule protected. Now the door was still open. Captain Andrew Mercer stepped out of the cockpit, tall, square-jawed, late 50s, with silver hair and the tired patience of a man who had handled weather delays, medical incidents, and angry travelers for decades. Patricia, he said. Why is the door still open? Patricia set the bottle down too quickly. They are holding us for some kind of gate issue. What gate issue? She glanced toward the jet bridge. I am not sure. He studied her face. Pilots learned to read hesitation the way doctors read pulse. What happened with the passenger in 1A? Patricia lifted her chin. She could not verify her ticket properly. Security handled it. Could not verify? She had a mobile pass only. No printed copy, no payment card. She became difficult. Captain Mercer did not move for a second. Then he looked toward seat 1A. Empty. A half-full glass of untouched water sat on the side console. No champagne, no welcome card, no passenger. Just absence. Behind him, Charles Whitman shifted in his seat, folding and unfolding the same newspaper. Eleanor Preston tapped at her phone, but her thumb had stopped moving. She knew enough now to know the air had changed. The captain turned back. Did anyone check with the gate before she was removed? Patricia's mouth tightened. She was refusing crew instruction. That is not what I asked. The same question again. The same hole in the story. Patricia felt heat climb her neck. Before she could answer, the interphone rang. Sharp. Once. Twice. The captain picked it up. Yes. His expression changed before he said another word. Patricia watched the color leave his face in stages. Understood, he said. A pause. Yes, I understand what that means. Another pause. I will remain at the gate. He hung up slowly. The cabin had gone almost silent. Even the passengers who did not know the details understood that something official had entered the room. Captain Mercer turned to Patricia. That was operations. Patricia forced a small laugh. Well, hopefully they can clear this up quickly. They asked whether we removed a passenger named Maya Bennett from seat 1A. Patricia's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Yes. That is the passenger I mentioned. The captain's eyes hardened. Do you know who Maya Bennett is? Patricia crossed her arms, but the movement looked smaller now. A passenger who failed to cooperate. No, he said. She is the daughter of Jonathan Bennett. The name did not strike every passenger at once. It moved through the cabin like a match catching dry paper. Charles looked up sharply. Eleanor's face tightened. A man in row 3 whispered. Bennett Global? The captain continued, each word controlled. Bennett Global Partners is leading Liberty Atlantic's $800 million restructuring package. Patricia stared at him. For the first time that morning, she looked truly confused. Not because she felt sorry, because the math had finally reached her. Captain Mercer lowered his voice. That package is still pending final confirmation, and the person your crew removed is connected directly to the family signing it. Patricia swallowed. Well, how was I supposed to know that? The words came out too fast, too defensive, too revealing. Captain Mercer took one step closer. You were not supposed to know her family. You were supposed to verify her ticket. A phone camera lifted in row 3. Then another. This time, no one hid it. Patricia looked around and saw something she had not expected. The same passengers who had watched Maya in silence were now watching her with suspicion. Not because they had suddenly become brave. Because power had changed sides. That realization cut deeper than shame. It exposed them all. In the gate area, Allison stood beside Maya, listening as Jonathan Bennett spoke to someone on another line. His voice came through calm and exact, naming departments, contract clauses, escalation rights, and regulatory obligations with the precision of a surgeon. Maya looked through the glass. She could see movement inside the cabin now. The captain near Patricia. Passengers turning, phones raised. She should have felt satisfaction. She did not. She felt tired. Because justice that only begins when power is discovered is not justice. It is fear wearing a better suit. Officer Reeves stepped beside her. Miss Bennett, he said quietly, for what it is worth, I am sorry. Maya kept her eyes on the aircraft. I believe you. He looked relieved. Then she added, but sorry does not undo the walk. He nodded once. No argument. That mattered. Back on the plane, Patricia's voice cracked. Captain, I acted in the best interest of the cabin. Captain Mercer looked at the empty seat 1A. No, he said. His voice was low. Final. You acted on an assumption. The words landed like a verdict. And somewhere beyond the glass, in a boardroom across the Atlantic, Jonathan Bennett ended one call and began another. This time he asked for Liberty Atlantic's chief executive. Jonathan Bennett did not ask for permission to speak to Liberty Atlantic's chief executive. He waited on the line for less than a minute. Then a new voice entered. Thin, careful, already afraid. Mr. Bennett, this is Richard Langley. In the New York conference room, every person at the table went still. Rachel Monroe stopped writing. The bankers stopped whispering. Even the Liberty Atlantic advisor at the far end looked down at his hands. Jonathan stood by the window, looking over Manhattan. "Mr. Langley," he said, "your airline removed my daughter from a confirmed first-class seat at Heathrow this morning." There was a pause, a small inhale. "I am just being briefed on the situation." "No," Jonathan said. "You are being briefed on the consequences." On the other side of the Atlantic, Richard Langley sat in Liberty Atlantic's Chicago headquarters, 12 floors above a busy street. He could no longer see clearly. His office was all glass and polished wood. Framed route maps lined the walls. A model of a Liberty Atlantic jet sat near the window, angled toward sunlight like a trophy. For months, that model had been a symbol of survival. Now it looked fragile. Richard gripped the edge of his desk. "Mr. Bennett, we sincerely regret any misunderstanding involving Miss Bennett. I want to assure you that we take all passenger concerns very seriously." Jonathan closed his eyes for 1 second. Corporate language, the shelter of weak men. "This was not a misunderstanding," he said. "A misunderstanding is when a gate changes. A misunderstanding is when luggage is misrouted, a ticketed passenger being questioned, ignored, accused, and removed after the system already confirmed her is not a misunderstanding." Richard leaned back in his chair, then leaned forward again. He could not get comfortable. "We are looking into whether proper procedure was followed." Jonathan turned from the window. "If proper procedure allowed this, your procedure is broken. If procedure was ignored, your leadership is broken. Either way, I have no interest in wiring $800 million into a broken culture." The room in New York tightened. Rachel Monroe slowly lifted her eyes. The Morgan Stanley representative stopped breathing through his nose and sat back. At Heathrow, Maya watched the gate screen change again. Delayed. No explanation. Passengers at nearby gates began to glance up. A murmur moved through the waiting area like weather shifting. Alison Parker held a tablet against her chest. Her supervisor had arrived now, a man named Daniel Price, 48, sweating through the collar of his white shirt despite the cool air. He had introduced himself with a hurried apology, and then stopped speaking when Maya looked at him. There was nothing hostile in her face. That was what made it worse. She looked like someone deciding whether a house could be repaired or needed to be torn down. Inside Flight 88, Captain Mercer stood in the forward galley with Patricia Collins. The cockpit door was open behind him. His first officer watched from inside, silent and tense. Patricia's hands trembled just enough for her to hide them behind her back. "I did not know," she said again. Captain Mercer's face did not soften. "That keeps being your defense. What else do you want me to say?" "I want you to understand why it is not a defense." Patricia looked away. In the cabin, Charles Whitman finally stood. He stepped into the aisle with his newspaper folded under one arm. His face was pale, not from fear for Maya, but from the shame of late recognition. "Captain," he said, voice low. For the record, she did show her pass. Patricia turned on him. "You said nothing when it mattered." Charles flinched. The captain did not. "No," Charles admitted. "I did not." That confession landed quietly. It was not heroic. It was necessary. Eleanor Preston stared at him from across the aisle. "Charles, sit down," she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said. "I should have spoken sooner." A younger woman in row 3 raised her hand slightly, phone still in her lap. "I recorded most of it," she said. She never raised her voice. Patricia's face drained. The story was no longer hers to write. Back in New York, Richard Langley tried one last time. "Mr. Bennett, I would urge you not to make a financing decision based on one employee's conduct." Jonathan's voice sharpened. One employee was the hand. Your company was the body that trained it, protected it, and gave it authority. Richard had no reply. Jonathan looked to Rachel Monroe. She was already sliding a document across the table. Notice of suspension, funding conditions unmet. Final review paused. Jonathan placed his hand over the page. "I am suspending the bridge financing review effective immediately," he said into the phone. "No funds move today. No funds move until independent counsel reviews the incident, your training records, your complaint history, and your response." Richard stood so quickly, his chair rolled back and struck the credenza. "Mr. Bennett, that will trigger a liquidity event." "I know. We have aircraft in the air." "I know. We have payroll obligations on Friday." Jonathan's voice dropped. "Then perhaps your company should have valued people before it needed money." Silence. That sentence reached farther than the phone line. It crossed the conference room. It crossed the ocean. It reached the gate at Heathrow, where Maya stood still as Allison's tablet began to buzz with one alert after another. Operational hold. Finance review suspended. Executive escalation. Do not release aircraft without clearance. Allison looked at Daniel Price. Daniel looked toward Flight 88. Inside the aircraft, Captain Mercer's radio crackled. "Flight 88, remain at gate. Corporate hold. Further instructions pending." Patricia heard it. So did every passenger. The cabin changed in an instant. No one spoke. No one moved. Then Charles Whitman looked toward the empty seat 1A, and for the first time that morning, he seemed to understand that the most expensive thing in first class had never been the seat. It was the dignity they had all watched being taken from it. The corporate hold appeared first as a small line of text on a screen. Then it became a chain reaction. At Heathrow, one dispatcher saw it and frowned. Another leaned over his shoulder. A supervisor picked up a phone. Within seconds, Liberty Atlantic Flight 88 was no longer just a delayed departure. It was a controlled stop. At gate B24, the jet bridge stayed locked to the aircraft. The engines remained quiet. The fuel truck that had been pulling away was told to stand by. Ground crew paused beneath the wing, looking up at the motionless aircraft as if it had suddenly become dangerous to touch. Inside the cabin, the mood changed from irritation to fear. Passengers who had been annoyed about missing meetings now opened news apps. Some searched Bennett Global Partners. Others searched Liberty Atlantic restructuring. The results came fast enough to turn faces pale. Charles Whitman read from his phone, lips barely moving. Bennett Global leading emergency financing package. He looked toward Patricia. She stood in the galley, rigid, her face stripped of its earlier certainty. Eleanor Preston finally stopped pretending she was above the moment. Her fingers shook as she adjusted the bracelet on her wrist. "Is this because of that girl?" she asked. The question was not loud, but it carried. Captain Mercer turned from the interphone. "That passenger has a name," he said. Eleanor blinked. No one corrected him. No one dared. Patricia's eyes flashed with panic now. "Captain, I need to contact crew relations." "You will wait," Mercer said. "I have rights." "You also had responsibilities." The words hit harder because he did not shout. The forward galley seemed smaller now. Patricia looked toward the cabin for support, but the same passengers who had once given her silence now gave her distance. That was one of life's cruel lessons. People often support injustice only while it looks safe. At the gate, Maya sat near the window, away from the crowd. Allison had offered her a private lounge. Daniel Price had offered water, coffee, a hotel room, another flight, anything he could think of. Maya accepted only water. The plastic cup sat untouched in her hands. Officer Reeves remained nearby, not hovering, just present. He had made his statement. He had given his badge number. He had admitted, in plain words, that gate verification should have happened before removal. That mattered to Maya, not because it fixed anything, because truth needed witnesses. Daniel Price stood a few feet away, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, she is still here," he said. "No, she has not agreed to reboard. No, I would not recommend asking that again." He listened. His shoulders sank. "I understand corporate wants a written summary. But with respect, corporate also needs to understand that the summary is not going to make this smaller." Maya looked up at him. For the first time, Daniel met her eyes without trying to manage her. He looked tired, human, frightened. "I am sorry," he said after ending the call. Maya waited. He added, "Not as a line, not as a company statement. I'm sorry. We failed you before we knew who you were. That is the part that should shame us most." Maya studied him. There it was, the sentence no one in the cabin had managed to say. "Before we knew who you were." She nodded once. That is where the work starts. Daniel did not understand at first. Then he did. He looked back at the plane. Inside Flight 88, the interphone rang again. Captain Mercer answered. His face changed. "Understood," he said. "I will bring her forward." Patricia stiffened. "Bring who forward?" He looked at her. "You." Her lips parted. "Why? Regional operations wants your statement in person. Security will escort you off the aircraft." The cabin heard enough. Phones rose again. Patricia's face went red. "You cannot remove me in front of passengers." Mercer's eyes held steady. "You removed a passenger in front of passengers." Silence. Clean. Sharp. No one moved. Patricia looked toward Charles, then Eleanor, then the rows behind them. All morning, she had confused silence with agreement. Now silence had become a mirror. She reached for her crew bag with stiff fingers. A junior flight attendant named Nina stood near the galley curtain, eyes wet, hands clasped in front of her uniform. She was 26, new to international routes, and had watched the whole thing happen with fear burning in her throat. As Patricia passed her, Nina whispered, "I should have said something." Patricia turned sharply. "Do not start." But Nina did not back down this time. "She showed the pass," Nina said. "I saw it. The cabin absorbed those 4 words. I saw it. Simple words. Late words. Still necessary." Patricia's mouth trembled, but anger had nowhere to land now. Captain Mercer stepped aside as Officer Reeves appeared at the aircraft door. His face was professional, but his eyes were heavy. "Miss Collins," he said, "please come with us." Patricia gripped her bag. "This is ridiculous," she whispered. No one answered. She walked down the jet bridge that Maya had walked minutes earlier. But where Maya had walked with dignity under suspicion, Patricia walked under truth. At the gate entrance, their paths nearly crossed. Maya stood as Patricia emerged. For 1 second, Patricia looked directly at her. Not as a passenger, not as a problem, as a person. Maya waited for an apology. It did not come. Patricia looked away, and that told Maya everything. Some people fear consequences more than they regret harm. Jonathan Bennett's voice came again through Maya's phone, still connected on a private line. "Maya," he said, "London Council is 10 minutes out." Maya watched Patricia being led toward the operations office. "Dad," she said, "make sure the review includes every complaint they ignored before mine." Jonathan was quiet. Then he said, "Already requested." Maya looked back at the plane, at the passengers, at the empty seat 1A. Her voice softened. "This cannot just become the day they learned my last name." Across the glass, Captain Mercer looked out toward her from the aircraft doorway. Maya did not smile. She simply stood there, steady and visible. For the first time that morning, no one could pretend not to see her. The operations office at Heathrow had no windows. That made it feel smaller than it was. Fluorescent lights hummed above a grey conference table. A wall clock clicked too loudly. Someone had left a paper cup of coffee near a keyboard, untouched and cold. The room smelled of printer toner, stale air, and fear dressed up as procedure. Patricia Collins sat at the far end with her crew bag at her feet. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. Across from her sat Daniel Price, Alison Parker, Officer Reeves, and a regional operations director named Simon Caldwell. Simon had arrived in a dark overcoat, breathing hard, as if he had run the last 100 feet through the terminal. He had not even removed his scarf. "Ms. Collins," Simon said, "I need you to walk me through the decision to remove Miss Bennett from Flight 88. Patricia lifted her chin. "I followed cabin safety protocol." Simon stared at her. "Start earlier." She swallowed. She appeared to be in the wrong cabin. "Appeared?" Patricia's fingers tightened. She did not present as a typical Apex Suite passenger. The sentence sat there. Ugly, honest by accident. Alison looked down. Officer Reeves closed his notebook for a second, then opened it again. Simon leaned back slowly. "What does a typical Apex Suite passenger present as, Ms. Collins?" Patricia's face reddened. "That is not what I meant." "It is exactly what you meant. I am asking you to explain it." Patricia looked at the table. She was dressed casually. So are half our premium passengers on long-haul routes. She was young. So are many tech executives. She had a backpack. Simon's voice sharpened, and a valid boarding pass. Patricia said nothing. From the hallway outside, voices rose and fell. Phones rang without stopping. Every department seemed to be calling every other department. Legal, finance, corporate communications, customer experience, crew scheduling. The machine was waking up, not because a woman had been harmed, because the harm had become expensive. In the gate area, Maya sat with a London attorney named Grace Holloway, who had arrived in a navy coat and flat shoes, carrying a leather folder and the calm expression of someone who knew how to make powerful people choose their words carefully. Grace had listened to Maya without interrupting. Not once. When Maya finished, Grace said only, "I believe you. Now we preserve everything." Those words settled something in Maya's chest. "I believe you," such a simple phrase. So often withheld from people who needed it most. Grace asked for names, times, witnesses, and recordings. Maya gave what she had. Officer Reeves had already provided his statement. Alison had printed the scan record, showing the exact time Maya boarded. Nina, the junior flight attendant, had quietly sent a message through crew scheduling, saying she was willing to give a statement. That mattered. Late courage was still courage if it told the truth. Across the glass, passengers were being informed that Flight 88 would not depart until further notice. Some groaned, some cursed, but others looked subdued now, as if the inconvenience had forced them into a mirror they did not enjoy. Charles Whitman stepped off the aircraft with his coat over one arm. He found Maya near the window and stopped a few feet away. "Miss Bennet," he said. Grace looked up. Maya did not stand. Charles's face carried the strain of a man who had rehearsed an apology and found every version too small. "I should have spoken up sooner," he said. Maya watched him carefully. "Yes," she said. The honesty made him flinch, but he nodded. "Yes, I should have. I saw enough to know it was wrong, and I let discomfort make me quiet." His voice broke slightly on the last word. Maya looked past him for a moment, toward the aircraft, then back. "People think silence is neutral," she said. "It is not. Not when someone is being singled out." Charles nodded again. "You are right." "I know. There was no cruelty in it. Only truth." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. "I gave my statement to the captain. I will give it again to your attorney if needed." Grace took the card. Maya held his gaze. "Thank you for doing it now." Charles looked like he wanted forgiveness. Maya gave him something better. Responsibility. Back inside the operations office, Simon Caldwell placed a printed page in front of Patricia. "This is the boarding scan. Green clearance. 10:16 in the morning. This is the manifest. Seat 1A. This is the special handling note. And this is your incident entry, filed after you removed her." Patricia stared at the papers. Simon tapped the last one. "You wrote, 'Passenger unable to provide verification.' That was false. I believed it at the time." "No," Simon said. "You preferred it at the time." Patricia's eyes filled, but the tears seemed to come from fear, not remorse. "I have served this airline for 31 years. And in those 31 years, Simon said, how many passengers learned to swallow humiliation because your uniform made them think no one would believe them?" Patricia looked up. For once, she had no answer. Simon stood. "Effective immediately, you are removed from duty pending termination review and regulatory reporting." Her breath caught. "You cannot do that. I can. And I have." Outside, the gate screen changed again. "Flight 88. Cancelled." A ripple moved through the crowd. Maya saw it. She felt no triumph, only the heavy knowledge that one cancelled flight was easier for a company to explain than years of quiet bias. Her phone buzzed, a message from her father. Funding review remains suspended. Full cultural audit required. Board notified. Maya read it twice. Then she looked at Grace. "I want the statement to say this clearly," Maya said. "This is not about revenge." Grace nodded. "What is it about?" Maya looked toward the passengers now gathering their bags, toward Officer Reeves, writing the truth, toward Allison helping an elderly traveler rebook with shaking hands, toward Charles standing alone with his regret. It is about making sure the next person does not need a powerful last name to be believed. Grace wrote that down, word for word. And for the first time all morning, Maya took a full breath. By late afternoon in New York, the story had already crossed the ocean. Not through a press release, not through a lawyer, through people. A shaky phone video from row 3. A quiet post from Charles Whitman. A short statement from a junior flight attendant who wrote, "I saw her ticket." She should have never been removed. That sentence traveled faster than Liberty Atlantic could contain it. Inside the airline's Chicago headquarters, the boardroom was silent, except for the sound of phones buzzing against polished wood. Executives sat beneath framed photos of smiling crews and silver aircraft, staring at screens filled with headlines they had prayed would never exist. Passenger removed after valid first-class ticket confirmed. Financing review suspended after Heathrow incident. Bennett Global demands full cultural audit. Richard Langley stood at the head of the table, tie loosened, face grey. The words on the screen behind him looked less like news and more like a verdict. "This is containable," one board member said. No one believed him. Rachel Monroe appeared on the conference screen from New York, seated beside Jonathan Bennett. Her tone was calm, but every sentence landed with weight. Bennett Global Partners is not resuming the financing review until Liberty Atlantic agrees to 3 conditions: independent investigation, public disclosure of findings, mandatory retraining, and accountability across premium service, gate operations, and crew escalation. A man near the end of the table frowned. That could take months. Jonathan leaned forward slightly. Then take months. The room froze. He did not sound angry. That made it worse. "You came to us because your airline needed money," he said. "But money cannot save a company that does not know how to see people clearly." No one interrupted. He continued. "My daughter was not harmed because one employee had a bad morning. She was harmed because too many people accepted a culture where suspicion comes faster than service when the passenger does not fit the picture in someone's head." Richard lowered his eyes. For once, there was no corporate phrase left to hide behind. At Heathrow, Maya stood near a quiet window in a private waiting room Grace Holloway had arranged. The sky outside had darkened into a bruised blue. Rain traced thin lines down the glass. Below, aircraft moved slowly beneath the lights, each one carrying strangers toward lives no one else could fully understand. Maya's replacement flight had been booked on another airline, not first class, a simple business class seat near the window. She had accepted it. Not because she could not demand more, because comfort was no longer the point. Alison Parker entered with a fresh cup of tea. She did not rush. She did not smile too hard. She just placed it gently on the table. "Your car is ready whenever you are," Alison said. Maya looked up. "Thank you." Alison hesitated at the door. "I have worked here for 12 years, she said. "I thought being fair meant treating everyone the same once they reached my desk. Today I realized fairness has to start earlier, before someone has to prove they deserve basic respect." Maya studied her face. There was no performance in it. Only a woman standing in the uncomfortable light of a lesson she should have learned sooner. "That is a good place to begin," Maya said. Alison nodded, eyes bright, then stepped out. A few minutes later, Officer Reeves came by. He stood at the doorway, cap in hand. "I submitted my full statement," he said, "including the part where I should have verified before escorting you off." Maya rose. "That could affect you." "I know." "Then why include it?" He looked down the hallway, where travelers moved in waves beneath bright airport lights. "Because my son is 17, he said. "And I keep telling him to be honest even when it costs him. I figured I should stop giving advice. I am not willing to live." For the first time that day, Maya's face softened. "That matters." He nodded once and left. Later, as Maya walked through the terminal, people turned to look. Some recognized her now. Some only recognized the story. But the looks felt different. Not cleaner. Not perfect. Different. A young black woman working at a cafe paused as Maya passed. Their eyes met for half a second. The young woman gave a small nod. Not fame. Not pity. Recognition. Maya nodded back. That was the moment that stayed with her. Not Patricia's accusation. Not the cancelled flight. Not the boardroom calls. That nod. Because pain can isolate a person, but truth, when spoken, can build a bridge. In the weeks that followed, Liberty Atlantic released the findings of the investigation. Patricia Collins was terminated. Several supervisors were reassigned. Complaint records were reopened. Training changed. Not the kind of training people clicked through while drinking coffee. Real training. Scenario-based. Measured. Reviewed by outside civil rights counsel. Nina, the junior flight attendant, kept her job. She also became part of a new crew advisory group. Her first recommendation was simple. When a passenger shows valid proof, verify before you judge. Charles Whitman sent a written statement to Maya through Grace. He did not ask for forgiveness. He promised to speak sooner next time. That mattered too, because healing is not always a hug. Sometimes healing is accountability that stays after the cameras leave. Bennett Global did not walk away forever. Months later, after reforms began and the board changed, Jonathan allowed the financing review to reopen under stricter terms, not because Liberty Atlantic deserved mercy, because thousands of good employees depended on the airline, and justice should punish systems without crushing innocent people trapped inside them. Maya flew again. This time no one questioned her seat, but she knew the deeper victory was not that people recognized her last name. The deeper victory was that one day, someone with no famous name at all might be treated correctly from the start. And that was the lesson she carried. Respect should never depend on wealth. Dignity should never require proof beyond being human. And silence, when someone is being humiliated, is never neutral. If this story moved you, like this video, so more people hear its message. Subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and human dignity. And in the comments, write these 3 words. Never stay silent.